Hey there, welcome to our chat today with Jess Heimlich and talking about Unity. Well, before we start down that path, let's kind of talk about what Unity is, because all week we've been hearing about a lot of different form factors that are intercom, whether wired or wireless, and Unity takes us in a different direction. It takes us to a form factor that is kind of a bring your own device on some shows. And on other shows, it's where we're providing the hardware for the client, but it's still both Wi-Fi and cellular based. And that's a bit of a change from our normal things that we're used to with intercom. So Mac and Pete, before we move to actually looking at the software and hardware together, Pete, of course, has had a lot of experience with, well, everything, because he's Pete. But Pete, why don't you kind of set up for us what you see as different about cellular-based and phone-based devices, and where the workflows are going to be a little different, things we just should be thinking about differently now.
Well, I've had a couple of shows where I've used Unity on, and a couple of shows where I've added Unity as an emergency device. First of all, it can be a very small system with a computer running a server and two belt packs, two iPhones, let's say, talking to each other through that server. We had a show on Major League Gaming where right at the beginning of the game, the police came to us and told us there was a credible threat against somebody becoming an active shooter at our show, and they wanted to have a live microphone that they could use to announce to the entire stadium from outside the stadium and inside the stadium. Well, we had no way to do that. We hadn't planned to do that. So I quickly took my other computer, started up the Unity server, plugged it in through an interface into the Rio, which is sitting right next to me. John Steiner passed it into the PA, talked to the IT department. They gave me an external IP from my computer, and inside of a minute, I had a button on my phone for Unity that could talk to the whole stadium. And it worked because it was a cellular connection. I was able to walk outside the building and have the same good connection no matter where I went. My phone would be handed off between cellular connections, and the quality of the audio was as good as a hardwired mic. And the producer was absolutely flabbergasted when we told him 5 minutes after he asked for this capability. And then strangely enough, nobody on the production staff wanted to take the responsibility of talking into it, so we didn't use it.
Of course.
But we could have.
Sure. I think one of the things that's interesting to me about this is the evolution that we see in every technology and every platform. And that is the same thing we dealt with wireless intercom. Well, we're not sure that we want to not have a wired position, so let's just always make sure we have wired backups to everything, right? And then cellular phones, when they came out, we were like, okay, well, cellular's okay, a wireless phone's okay, but really need a landline just to make sure, right? And over time, what we've developed into is this kind of situation where it's like, well, we trust the cellular network. The scale of the cellular network is massive. Wi-Fi, we use Wi-Fi so ubiquitously now. So I think it's a really timely topic here, and I think I've talked enough about cellular and my amazement of the extension, and I don't want to give the impression this is a cellular only discussion. This is obviously Wi-Fi, but it's just the idea that any device now, Android or iOS, is now an intercom pack. And
I did find out through experimentation that and Jess can probably address this, it doesn't appear to be using the cellular telephone circuit, because I can be in the middle of a stadium where it's impossible to make a cellular telephone call or impossible to even get a Wi-Fi, and my connection to Unity is rock solid. I was in the middle of Times Square connected to Unity without any problem whatsoever. So it must be some kind of data channel that's being used, but maybe Jess can
Possibly.
answer that.
Well, I think that's a great segue. I'm going to click off here and let you and Jess kind of take us through our Unity experience together.
Go for it, Jess.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in to this. Peter gave you a little preface into the situation. And what you're seeing right now is what we refer to the Unity client screen. As you can see, I'm logged in. I want to take a step back and show you where we go from ground zero. So I'm going to log out and you'll see what's going on. Okay, when assuming you have all at this stage of the game downloaded the program and opened it up, this is the first thing you will see. You'll enter your name right there, as you can see.
We're looking at the server now, not the client.
Let me
share your client, please.
Got it now?
That's good. Yep.
Okay, so this would be the first screen you see, where you enter your name, you enter a password, both of which are assigned by the administrator of the server. I don't know why I keep seeing this FaceTime ID, but we'll get rid of that. Underneath it, this is a button, even though it doesn't look like it, called Settings. And this is where you go about setting up the IP address, if you will. I have a Dyn DNS account so that wherever I am in the country, I can assign my present IP to this so that all clients can always have this on their phone and still get into Unity Intercom. The default port for Unity Intercom is 20101. Underneath that, you'll see Wi-Fi IP host. What that is if you're running a network, hardline network, and also a Wi-Fi IP, you enter that, and should one drop out, the other one picks up. Something else that's important to notice is you'll see connection type down on the bottom, and it should always be set to direct connection. One other thing, regardless of where you are in the program, if you get lost, you will always see a back button. That will always take you to your main screen. So let's have me log in for a second. And you now see that I am logged in with 6 channels. These are our talk channels. These are our listen channels. Through the through the server software, you can designate any channel as a talk and listen or just a listen channel. As far as settings are concerned, oh, by the way, if I want to talk on a specific channel, I click on it, and as you can see, in this situation, CAMS talk and CAMS listen is available. Now, just as a quick example of the speed of this, and the capabilities. Let's say, for example, I wanted to just make my camera channel a listen only. On the count of 3, I'm going to push the button and you will see the talk key disappear. 1, 2, 3. So that is the speed with which this thing operates. And again, if I wanted to return it to a talk and listen situation or capability, it would be there. If you want to talk on, let's say, the camera channel, you have these highlighted. You'll notice in the center of the screen that yellow area that says press to talk or double tap for Vox. Pressing once, I'm now talking on the camera channel. If I double tap, I now have Vox capability to that channel. And we're back to there. Another thing that's very interesting on this screen is, without getting into the settings yet, we, as you can tell, have 6 channels on this intercom at the moment. Within the settings, I have the capability of making any one of these listen channels a priority listen channel. So consequently, if I did, and you do that by pressing on the top of the cams channel, and you see that an additional blue notification has showed up there. So if you had,
Jess, can I interrupt you just for a second?
sure.
What was your Dyn DNS name? Jay Heimlich?
No, it's DCS
Ah,
COMMS at Dyn DNS.
I've got that. I've got that.
So basically, as I said, what this has, by doing this, I make this my priority listen channel. So if you were listening to, I hear you, Peter. If you were listening to all of these channels through the settings menu, which we'll bring up in a minute, excuse me, the camera channel would be your primary listen and everything would be gated or ducked down. And when we get into the settings, I'll show you that. Now, over here on the right, one of the new additions to the program, which is very recent, is you see the word Peter. That's showing me that the latest caller has been, to me, is Peter. If I wanted to talk back to Peter on a point-to-point, I would just press it, and I would be in a point-to-point situation with Peter. Now, this is me talking from New York. And this is me talking on my phone from Las Vegas. I'm now on right. And I am talking to Peter point to point. You can see in the center of the screen, it says talk to Peter privately. Now, Pete, do me a favor and point to point me again and keep that button depressed. Now, when you receive a point-to-point call from someone, you'll notice that the screen flashes in a neon blue. This is another way to let you know that Peter is trying to get in touch with you via point-to-point. These other entries down here show you that the ones that are in, I guess you call it a light brown, show you that Peter has been trying to talk to me on one of the 6 channels here. Excuse me. Down here, well, let me step back a minute. There's two basic modes to using this. One is the administrator mode, and the other one is just a regular user mode. I'm going to go over and show you the server screen for a minute. And if you notice, I'm in the administrator mode, and that's shown by the check that says administrator. So consequently, when you see that, you will see these two icons down here. This icon here is the equivalent of an all call. Anyone that's on this server will then hear the administrator or whoever is assigned as an administrator. You can have one administrator or you can have everyone assigned as an administrator. Over here, we solve a problem that has been driving all of us crazy for about 20, 25 years. And that is somebody left a key open. If we've determined, for example, that on the comms channel, there's someone who has a key open, I can come down here, hit this, and that will knock off all talk switches on everyone who is on that comms channel.
Could you explain a little bit how the Vox works? Does it work on only one channel, or does it work every time you talk, or what is it?
The Vox related to here? The Vox related to the
Correct,
area?
where it's right, where it's a double tap for Vox. How does that exactly work?
That works on every channel that you have highlighted in your talk area, top of the screen. If I were to do this, I would be talking to everyone on every channel. And as you can see, along the top, there's a yellow area above each of the channels. And if you notice, when I stop talking, they'll turn off. So Vox does have the ability, as I said, to talk to each and every channel that you have selected. Excuse me. Another question that's been asked quite regularly is, okay, this is great, but it's only 6 channels. Well, in reality, it's not. You have, with additional this is the basic Unity configuration you can buy. There are add-on modules, one of which is expanded users and groups. So if you look towards the lower third of the screen, right under where it says listen, you will see the word default. So this is what we call the default group, which when we get into the server, I'll show you more of. If I have this set up for a number of groups now. For example, I have a stage manager ISO group, and I selected that by hitting those 2 green arrow buttons. If I hit it again, you'll see that I have an ABC test. So I can assign, and once again, a camera channel. I can assign any user to any group at any time. In addition, as you see, we have 4 channels open here. I can take any one of the channels that I've assigned and registered, if you will, within the server and drop them onto any of these screens. For example, I could take team 3 and through the server, drop it onto the cams channel. So in reality, like I said, you have 128 channels that you're capable of accessing at any given time. Another interesting thing about this is users. And I keep hitting that mouse instead of my hand. At the moment, you can see that Peter is online because you see this blue button here. This also acts as a point-to-point page. So if I click on that, Peter will get the same kind of notification on his screen. Can you go back to your other screen, Pete? Okay, and as you see, my name is at the top, showing that I'm calling him point to point. I stop, it stops. We have somebody logged in on guest 10, who I'm not quite sure it is, but same thing.
Just point out that the unit I'm using is an Android phone, and you're using an iPhone. So the Android software currently doesn't support the last caller list on the right-hand side, but it will eventually.
Correct. Thank you. And as you can see, I have also made Peter or I will make him. Well, you're looking at Peter's screen right now. You can see that he's just a regular user because he doesn't have those 2 little icons that we spoke about. Right now, I'm going to make him an administrator, and there they are. And just as easily, I can take it away like that. So there's a heck of a lot of versatility within this program. The other thing you'll notice on this page being I call it the point-to-point page. Other people call it the user page. First and foremost, like I said, if you ever get stuck, there's the back button, which takes you back to ground zero, if you will, your main screen. Underneath Peter, you'll see Brian right here, and you'll see the word page. The program has the ability, if someone is online, if someone is a registered user within the server and they are not online, you can click this page button and that will send them an SMS push message and tell them that someone online wants to talk to them. They sign on, then they can talk just like any other user. And of course, this corresponds to as many people as you have.
I just logged out, so you should be able to page me now, because there we go.
Okay, let's see where Peter is. Okay, when you log out, there's about a 15-second delay until the system clears you out and totally. At the moment, as you see, Peter is not completely logged out as far as the system is concerned. Blue shows you online. Orange shows that the system is in the process of clearing that. And
Now I'm logged in, so I'm back at the top of the screen.
okay. And a gray or nothing will show you that they are not either online or logged out. Let's go back to this main page for a minute. There's a little bit of a misnomer in this program that's bothered me since day one. And
Before we get into that, Jess, hold on one second. Is there any way we can give some logins to some people to try? I know that you have a guest 1 through guest 9 programmed in there with password, I think 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that right?
I have guest 1 through guest 12. And at the moment, the only one being used is guest 10.
And they're all the same password?
Yes, it would be. Let me switch to that screen for a second so people can see.
And then it's sort of first come, first serve. Whoever gets to it, you won't be able to log on if somebody else has used it.
The logon name would be this, and the password would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll log out of the Unity client for a minute. So that you can see, and we'll walk through so for example, guest 1 would be placed up here, typed in there. 1, 2, 3, 4 would be typed in there. Down here, you would connect direct.
And go back to the settings page too.
Yes, and then on the settings page, you would make sure that you had it set up just like that. You could then go back and do your login.
And let me just tell people, DYNDNS.TV is a service that you can buy that you put that piece of software on your server. And even if your server is behind a NAT, a network address translation system, that software will find out what your public IP is and post it to their website. And when you put this DNS.DCS.comms.DNS.TV on as your IP, it goes to that website, finds out what it is, and gets you in. And that's the trick to doing it. Otherwise, you need to have your IT department, give you a public IP.
Okay, one additional note about that is when you subscribe to this DYNDNS function for your server, if you were to move your server from LA to New York, for example, you would end up with a different IP address. There is a
but the same word would get the right place.
Well,
you have to refresh your DYNDNS software.
Right. You have to go into the DYNDNS updater and tell it to refresh, which is a button click. And it's basically the equivalent of a lookup table. And it would then direct the user or the client to the server, regardless of where the server was in the world. One of the things I tell people is this will work anywhere in the world that has internet access. As an example, Unity is presently being used by this A&E show called Live PD. There are about 80 people on the system at any given time when they run a live show. And there's 5 people in each city. Every people via this is able to talk to the control room in New York City.
Jess told me an interesting story when they first tried this out, and they were doing their first tech, and the director sat down and he said, "Okay, Denver, let me see how you sound." And the producer, who was on Unity Intercom in Denver, responded, and the director was so blown away by the quality of the sound that he threw his headset off and went in the room where Jess said, "And how the F did you do that?"
Yeah. Additionally, after about 4 weeks, the director of the show, John Gonzalez, who is a legend in our business, got so sick and tired of hearing, I won't use other manufacturers' names, but other wireless belt packs and other hardwire camera communication within the studio, which was 20 feet away. He demanded that they all be thrown out and everybody put onto Unity because the quality is significantly better. This has happened on Live PD, Live Rescue. SpaceX is using this system. ESPN has about 70 of these systems that are working when they're doing live production, which obviously is not occurring now. I don't know if I mentioned it. SpaceX is also using it. I'm in the process right now of putting together a system for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this is gaining a lot of publicity and a lot of exposure, and seems to be up and coming in the business. I honestly can't tell you the number of systems that are out there, but it's over 200 right now. Couple other things we should address on this page is settings. And if you scroll to the top, you'll see you have a variety of things. The first is echo cancellation. I will tell you that when you use this system, the way it's designed is that if you're looking for side tone in a system, don't use the system. By virtue of the fact that your side tone is derived from the server. So by the time it goes from your phone to the server back to you, you're going to see a delay. Okay. I think pretty much most of these things. Go ahead, Peter.
We had one quick question. I think we weren't clear about what we were talking about. Ryan Trevison asked, what is the IP host? And that's what we're talking about with the DynDNS.tv. That is a service that is providing an IP for us. That's where it is. And personally here at home, in my apartment, I have a server and I'm on Peter at DynDNS.tv, which gets me in.
Right.
But anybody can use that service. And actually, when you subscribe to the service, I think they give you 40 or 50 possible names you could put in for the same price. I forget what it is, but it's not one name.
I believe it's 30, but don't hold me to that.
I'm going to
So
hold you to it.
in lieu of using that, DCS comms at dinedns.tv, you could easily enter my IP address, which is 24.234.163.216.
Now, one of the people trying to log in and getting an error can't resolve host name. Is that because somebody else is already logged on under that name?
Probably. They can try. I see guest 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9 in use. Let me switch to that screen and I'll show you. You now see what's open. If you guys want, I'll run out of the guest names. You can use any of these other names of people who are not on at the moment, and their IP address would be the same.
On a regular iPhone, what's the battery drain like on this client? Assuming you don't turn the screen off, how long is it going to last?
Okay. On a regular iPhone, the transmission and reception is about 6K a second. So when I send out my rentals and or purchases, I should say, or sales, I include an external battery somewhere in a range of 6 to 10K, or I should say milliamp hours.
Right, okay, 6,000 milliamp hours as a backup.
Right, and that will run from 8 a.m. in the morning till midnight.
This phone, which is a Sonum, which uses almost the entire back is a battery, will run for 12 hours on one battery.
Okay. Getting back to the settings, you have a mic AGC. I think it doesn't need any further description than what you see on the screen. Allow notification sounds, self-explanatory. Then you'll see something that's very interesting called single channel talk mode. And this is great for people like.
Can you switch to the picture of your client so we can see that thing? Right now we're on the server.
I'm sorry. Thanks for reminding me. You have right here something called, in the center of the screen, single channel talk mode. So I'm going to switch over and back and show you what it does when I turn this on. Now this person cannot talk to more than one channel at a time. He can listen to both channels, but his talk capability is limited to one channel. Again, this is something great for cameras, for example. I can switch over to here, and now he's only talking on cameras. This prevents, of course, a lot of confusion for the novice. If we go back to settings, we will also see something called constant talk mode, which I have yet to see anyone use. The description is pretty much self-explanatory. Underneath that is something called push-to-talk definition. Basically, you can attach a Bluetooth push-to-talk button to this system by pairing it to your phone and then enabling it within the program. The definition, as it says, allows you to select talk to operate as the normal talk or solo of 1 through 6 channels. And there you can see solo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pretty much it's used as a talk function. Below that, mute headset when talking, self-explanatory. You have the ability to, underneath that, to keep your screen on at all times, which of course eats up battery life. Underneath that, beep while talking. Of course, the cellular network in the United States is not foolproof. There are areas where you may come into a situation where you're out of range, even if you take as few as 15 steps. This beep while talking will put a tone in your ear just to tell you that you're still connected and you're still talking. Underneath that, we see private message beep. Again, this goes when you're doing a point-to-point. If you don't like that, you have the option to use a private message vibrate, which basically does the same thing, except it vibrates the phone for you. We also see audio buffer, which, as you can see now, is set at 140 milliseconds. It will go down as low as 40 milliseconds. The primary purpose of this buffer is if you're in a sketchy area and you're losing some of the transmission, it will increase your buffer size and consequently diminish the amount of lost packets. We have a Bluetooth push-to-talk button. Once you've paired a Bluetooth push-to-talk button, which we rent or sell, to your phone, and you turn this on, you can literally leave the phone in your pocket if you're operating, say, on one channel, and take this button, which is about the size of a quarter, Velcro it to your laminate or some other convenient place, maybe the viewfinder, panhandle, etc., and just hit that, and that will initiate the same thing as the push to talk on your main PL screen. Talent tally brightness is an interesting one. If you're using an iPhone and you have tally mode, which is another module, you can set it up so that the flash on the back of an iPhone will light up when that camera goes to air. And that is done through a GPI module, which I can show you within the server. And pretty much last but not least is if your phone goes out of range for any reason and you have this selected, it will continue to retry to establish a connection for you. So those are the basic setting functionalities. Excuse me. Now, we're back on the main screen. At the bottom, underneath the time, you see something called volume. If you put your finger on that and touch it or scroll up, you will see a bunch of different level ducking capabilities. As we showed before, when we made the camera channel a priority channel, we can have those other PLs duck from off all the way to non-ducking. So you may want everyone else running at 9 dB so that you can always ensure you're hearing the director. Direct talk ducking relates to point to point. Somebody calls you point to point, it ducks all the PLs for you. Underneath, and it too works the same way. Program feed ducking. If you look below at the present, we have this channel 2 as our program feed. If we use, which it can be changed depending upon the IO hardware you're using. Let's say you're going Maddie or Dante, you can select any one of 64 of those channels to be your program channel. You can also have multiple channel programs. You may want to have the show program. You may want to have a pre-fade of a talent, and so on. And so,
IFB maybe?
an IFB, exactly. And down on the bottom, you have the ability to control the level of the program feeds that are selected. Oops.
Why is there no program available?
It depends on where you are and how it's been set up within the server, which is the next thing we're going to hit. And once again, as I've said many times, the very top is the back button, which takes you back to your screen. For all of you who have signed in, you see those green arrow buttons. You should be able to hit those and scroll and see the different number of screens, each of which has 6 channels. Okay, up to 128 channels.
So those are groups, right?
Um,
So each one of those screens is a group. So you could have production in every single one of them and different things in the rest of the channels, right?
and the name of the group is directly below the listen. So you see ABC test as a group, you see CAMS as a group, you see default as a group, and you see stage manager ISO as a group. Okay. Are there any questions regarding this? I know I've gone through it rather quickly because I'm accustomed to doing this demo many
We
times.
have been sort of answering questions as we go along that are obvious ones that we knew had already been answered. And you have actually answered pretty much everyone that's up there now. There was one note about full duplex directs or latchable. I'm not sure quite what that question means. Mitchell Boyce sent it. I'm not sure what he means, duplex directs or latchable. Well, the mic is latchable.
I'm not sure what it means either, but this is a full duplex system.
Mitchell, if you want to elaborate on that question a little bit, we'll get back to you on that.
There's also a question about other headsets for high noise environments. Do you have a supplier, or do you supply an adapter or headsets if you need something like David Clark headsets that you might need in a rock concert?
On their website are those headsets.
Yes, on the website are those headsets. My suggestion, much to the chagrin of the owner of the company, the major owner of the company, is don't use those headsets. For the
These are
main,
headsets that they've designed for it and
These
put on
are
there. They're not like Dave Clark headsets.
there are Dave Clark headsets available, but they've also come out with their own line of headsets, which are similar. I will not send out any system anymore with any of those headsets because there is no noise isolation whatsoever.
In terms of microphone noise canceling, you mean?
Yes. All of my systems go out with one of two types of headsets. There is a Jabra headset, which is a two-ear, in-ear headset, which has 8 hours of talk time and 13 hours of standby. My favorite and the favorite of most clients is a Blue Parrot headset, which is an over-the-ear headset. It has 25 hours of talk time and I think 48 hours of standby time. Also,
Are those links on the Unity website?
no, they are
Those
not.
headsets? So
Because-
I'll get them from you and we'll post them with this video.
Right. They prefer to use the headsets that they sell. Although I am the exclusive rental agent and the sales manager for them, I discourage people away from those headsets for the simple reason that I would not use them. The Blue Parrot headsets also get extremely loud. I used them at a Britney Spears concert with only a single muff, and I could actually get it louder than the acoustic audio that was happening. So those are mine. Those are my two choices for headsets.
On the Blue Pair, do you use the Bluetooth ones or the hardwired ones?
The Bluetooth ones. And the simple reason I am using the Bluetooth ones is although the quality is not exactly the same as the hardline, it's almost indistinguishable. And for communications, it does a fabulous job.
We did have a show, Mac and I worked on a show which was with PlayStation 2. There were over 150 PlayStation 2 systems running, and they all run Bluetooth that cannot be turned off. So all the Bluetooth headsets people were using just were a disaster. So if you
Okay,
have
well,
the option, get the wired version as well.
let me step away for a second and I'll show you something. The buttons.
Pete, maybe while Jess is away, you could cover the four wire interface. There's been a question about how to connect to a wired comm, and
On that in about 20 seconds.
He'll get to that, and then I'm also going to show the way my server is set up, and we'll go over that too. But he'll get to the interface when he gets to the server.
Great, thanks.
So
I assume you can see me in my ugly mug.
with
This-
a channel,
This is the Bluetooth
they have
Blue Parrot. There's a button right here. I do not like the other buttons on this other than the power button.
on the bottom, or the unshare your screen so your video is bigger. Just click on the square box. Then I take this cable and fold it down over it. Of the there we go.
Okay, so this is the headset
Coherence mode.
of my choice. It's pretty robust. There's a power button on this. You push it, you hold it. It will pair up with your computer, and you go from there. Now, the other item that we use, let me back it off, is this push to talk button that you've heard me talk about today. So consequently, once you pair that headset, you can attach this to your laminate or, like I said, a viewfinder or anything else that's convenient. You push it and it keys the yellow press to talk button on the main PL page. Battery life on this, I'm not sure about. The manufacturer claims 2 years. You can replace the battery. It's just a straight 2032 battery. 3 screws in the back, pop it out, pop a new one in, you're ready to go. So let's go have a look at this Unity client screen from the beginning. I assume you can all see that. The first tab is General Settings, where you name the server. Check mark if you want it to log in when you turn on the computer. Show and dock, you'll notice up here, I have the Unity mini menu or settings as well. Sample rate. Pretty much everybody is going with 48K now as a standard. The most important thing about this particular screen is in order for Unity to work, you have to be able to pass a TCP connection and a UDP connection. This port 20101 is the default, but you can change it to anything above 2000. I just say because it's pretty much unused by everything else. Network interface, and depending upon the situation, you are going to have.
Jess,
Yes, sir.
Jess, could you mute the speaker on your phone there? All the people trying the system out are getting a little hard in the background for us to hear you.
Okay. The network interface here is that which connects to the server. Okay. Obviously, if you're using Dante or Maddie, you're going to have a different selection down here. Now, the input device. If and when you plug in, well, let's go back and say the system is capable of analog input, MADI input, and Dante input. It works with the Audinate software without a problem. And as far as if you're using MADI, you plug in a MADI interface, it will show up in this input and output device, and you can select it from there. Next thing is channels. I've just entered a bunch of channel names here with their abbreviation. If you want to add another channel to this, you click on this and we'll call it Pete Private Channel. You hit tab, it sends you over. You can, if you leave it blank, it's going to use the same label as you entered for the channel, or you can call it something else. These input numbers correspond to the interface that you're using. So if you're using, let's say, a Focusrite Scarlett 18i20, and you plug the spotters into input 6, which I can't show you now because it's not connected, but once the interface is connected, it will give you a drop down of all the available channels you have. If you're using Dante, it'll give you a list of 64 channels that you can select from. Input level, input gate, output number, and input number are pretty much the same. They don't have to be, but they can. Output level, depending upon the intercom you're dealing with, input and output levels, I should say, depending upon the intercom you're dealing with, you can play with to get the closest match to all of your hard lines or any of your key panels. Over here, you have a GPIO. What you can do is hook this up so it can be used in conjunction with this tally system, which I do not have a license for, but right here are all your tallies. You hook the box up to your computer. You tell it the interface type, GPIO type, status, its IP address, its tally port, GPIO port, and then you go and select what outputs you want this to affect. We talked a little bit before about talent tally. If you would want to use, for example, this channel tally ID 1 and use it as a talent cue light, if you will, using the light on the back of the iPhone, that's how you'd go about it. Again, we talked about the channels. Now the groups. As you saw before, you can have up to 64 different groups with 128 channels. Any group can accept any channel from this list up to 128. If I want to change this from chat on the default group to make it channel 6, I do that. Channel 6 appears on the screen on the main PL screen. If we go to cameras and I change that to cameras, it shows up as you see on Pete's phone. I can then change this to CD production and it'll show up there. Or I can change it to channel 6. You're on cams, that's the problem. Okay. I can then take and also knock out the channels so that there are no channels showing. So again, if you buy this enhanced module for advanced channels and groups, any one of 128 channels can be assigned to any button on any client. You have your user screen here. Now, since we have Pete here, let's take, Pete, why don't you go to the default screen, if you will. There you go. Okay, so as you can see, Pete has cameras, channel 6, comms, stage manager, team 2, and research. I can, if we're looking at the camera channel, I can take away his camera talk and only have him as a camera listen. And this is instantaneous. Again, I'll do the old 1, 2, 3 count and then push the button. 1, 2, 3. And that's how long.
For those of you who are not aware, Jess is near Las Vegas and Pete is near New York City.
I have done demonstrations with this system with Tokyo, Amsterdam, New York, and Las Vegas. And there is no discernible difference in audio quality from any source because it's IP and because of the codecs that are being used. Any questions so far? Because I know I'm throwing a lot of information out there.
So the Blue Parrot headset you were talking about was the B350 or the B450?
450. It's a 450 XT. And again, depending upon your desires, you can order it as a package through us for rentals or sales, or you can go out and source them yourselves. Any other questions so far to date on this?
Can we jump over to audio I/O to external system?
Audio.
I know you said that the 64 channels and the 64 channels that are showing on the screen right now are your program feeds, but they're also your intercom feeds.
The 60, let's hypothetically say that you are using 20 channels of Dante for actual communication. That leaves you 21 through 64, which can be used for any kind of program feed. If we go back to the general page for a second, where is it? Excuse me.
It's on the channels page.
Thank you.
The assignment of the channel that you're giving to each.
No, I'm looking for, there's a default program input, which my brain is just.
Other than the, isn't it? Well, if you go back to the audio feeds page, default program you assign in the column program feed name.
I can assign this as a default program, and you'll notice that it pops up here. So let me clean all of this junk out for a second. I'll show you. And I'll just do it with this.
But now if you're using channels 1 through 12 as 4-wire interfaces, that would be the 1 through 12 at the beginning of this list, right?
Right. So what we can do is come down here hypothetically, and let's just make 64 our default program feed. As you notice, it populates everything. I'm going to get rid of these just so I can show you something. Okay, so we now have channel 64 as our program feed. And this is a global program feed that will hit everything. Let's say we don't want that. Let's say that Brian, for example, wants channels 34, 37, 42, 47, and 61. When he goes to the and by the way, I can label these here so that they don't say 64. It'll say whatever I decide to call it. It can be Jimmy ISO. And when you go to your volume page under program feed,
on my bell pack, put a bunch of different program feeds.
Okay, well, scroll on the bottom where it says volume, scroll up. Okay, so I'll go to Pete, and I'm just picking random numbers. And as you see, if you scroll that list,
it's not, I'm only seeing off on the program
we'll
feed.
hit off again, and then scroll where it says off. You don't want it to say off. No, down below where it says off. Now you
There
should.
doesn't appear to be any other option other than off on my. Like, it doesn't offer me anything other than off.
Aha. The reason for that is because you don't have the enhanced program feed module
In the client, okay.
in the server.
Well, you have the server.
Right. But the server, if we go over here to purchase, you'll
Right.
see there's an advanced program feed license.
Which is not installed, okay.
Right. I can install it. As soon as I hit install,
You get a bill.
I get a bill. It's going to give me the code. I enter it down here. I hit activate, and bang, it's running.
Now, where do you actually assign the 64 channels to your PL channels?
You don't assign them to the PL channels unless you want to.
But let's say I have 4 wires coming in on those channels. Don't I assign those in the channel screen?
You would assign them in here.
So I have to pull down the input number and the output number to
Right.
select the channel that goes for each of those.
Correct. And then those 4 wires will show up.
Do they still show up in the program matrix when I assign them to a spot channel? Let's say that first one spot. Or do I just have to remember those are 4 wires instead of program feeds?
No, you can assign them to these channels if you so desire.
So could you assign channel input 1 and output 1 as, let's say, the spot channel, first row?
Right here, I could assign this to 1, and I could assign the output number to 1.
Okay, now if I look on the program feed, audio feeds tab,
That will not show.
but the 1 will still be there, right?
Yes.
So I have to know that that's my 4 wire and not accidentally use it as a,
Well, when you set this up,
right?
example, you can
You
change.
just got to make sure that you don't cross use them.
Right. You can change this to or. Now, when you go to your list of program feeds,
That'll
that
show up as bill prefade,
show
right?
up as Bill's prefade.
But in actuality, that 1 we've already used as a 4 wire to the spot channel.
That's correct. So it takes a little
So
bit of maintenance here.
So we just have to remember, start on the low numbers for your comm channels maybe, and go from the high numbers down for your program channels, just to be sure.
Personally, I would do it the other way
Or
around.
the other way, right.
But
Now,
you're-
that being said, if I listen to one of these channels, let's say one with my spot channel, I put it in as a program channel and another bell pack, they would hear the spot channel.
Yes.
Yeah, Pete, you should have watched our last session. It was on paperwork and pre-production, and then you would have paperwork to tell you which channels you used.
Exactly. Then I would not be so confused. Thank you very much, Mac.
We've already talked about, obviously I don't have Gpio on this, but pretty much last but not least is your advanced page. And that's interesting. For some reason, she doesn't want to go there. The advanced page has 2 options, which are for hardline clients. And what it does is cuts down on the delay between the server and a hardline client.
What does it take out of the circuit to make that happen?
Well, you're not going through your phone radio. You're not going through cellular.
Or you mean making a connection in the server and your hard line is connecting to the server, right?
Correct.
To these connections right there. Okay.
Correct. And I don't know why. Let me see something for a minute. And let me just go back to this and see if it clears it up. Well, that's an interesting bug, and I assure you that this works.
Are all of your clickers not working on any of them, right? That's probably a bug in the sharing screen software, the webinar. We've noticed that occasionally you have to close the whole window and open it again to get them all to work.
Okay. And again, we saw the purchase screen before,
Right.
which allows you to add clients
Right.
or any of the other features that the system has available to it.
Now, to get into these 64 channels, will a typical ASIO audio interface see these as ASIO channels, like a D to A interface?
Once it's plugged in to the computer, the server will see the number of channels that are available. Yes.
And they would show up 1 through ASIO channel 1 through 64 in and out.
Yes.
Or if you had a Dante card in your Atom system, you could plug it straight in and go Dante straight from here on your
Right.
laptop using the Dante control panel or something like that. Yeah.
Right. And the same for Maddie.
Okay. Okay.
Jess, I have a question about connecting. If you're renting your server or renting Pete's server and you're on location, can you have a local laptop on location that has an audio interface that can get 4 wires in and out of the system?
I am going to talk about that as soon as I show you my system, which is set up to do that.
Okay.
Okay. But basically the short answer is, let's say you're using a Focusrite Scarlett 18i20. It will show up in the list of available devices. And allow you to select how you want to program that.
We had a question from someone, can you get more than one instance of your server running in different places for the same system? So you have I/O in different places.
No.
So if we had different I/Os, we have to get them into the same computer somehow.
Well, there's a trick to that. Unity also makes a program called Unityconnect.
I'm going to change the presenter so I can show that to you on my screen.
Okay.
Okay, this is my server screen. And it shows in the lower left-hand corner a magical program called Unityconnect. And this is even more magical than you might imagine. It was designed to be used by Dante people. And the interesting thing about Dante is it's very hard, impossible in a regular Dante network to take your Dante signal and ship it to another location and have it come out in the same condition it went in. And what this Unityconnect does is it takes 64 4-wire channels and ships them to another copy of the same piece of software, which I think is still $500 per computer.
Yes.
And ships all 64 channels at the same time in the same packet. So they all arrive at the same time in sync.
Yes. One thing to note about that, if you're using Arvon and you have 8 Arvon channels and you were to assign the same source to 8 Arvon channels, they would all arrive at separate times, hence out of sync. Because of the fact that Connect ships 64
Everything,
channels
right, at the same time,
at
right?
one time, everything will show up in sync.
And which is not good for Arbonne.
Which is not good for Arbonne, which is good for UnityConnect.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, on the right, Pete, you're showing a program called Loopback.
This is a tricky little program that allows me to connect audio in one program on my computer to audio in another program on my computer. And it's actually become much more graphic over the years.
And basically what you could do in reference to the 2 audio sources in 2 different locations that you're referring to would be to set up another aggregate device over here and ship audio from one location where you have Connect to another location where you have Connect, then take those audio sources through Loopback
with another set of interfaces
sources,
set up down here. Yeah,
which would then be selectable within Unity.
exactly.
Drop them in.
So what I've got is this little program called Loopback, which is taking 8 channels of my UnityConnect, both sending and receiving, because there's the UnityConnect is basically 4 wires, so it's sending and receiving. There's the other half here. And when I plug this software in and turn it on the other side, I will see a little green light show up somewhere here, right here, I think, that shows me that channel is connected to the other piece of software and will show me the audio level of that channel coming in.
And over here also the latency as well.
It'll show you exactly the latency it's having to deal with, and it's automatically adjusted.
The other thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. What I've set up on one screen, it's the title of the incoming system is Connect to Server, and the other one I labeled Server to Connect, or Server to Connect.
Right.
Server to Connect. So those are the 2 channels I set up in my Loopback. So those servers, then I can wire them in where I want to. So these output channels are going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of my Unity server. So here on the Unity server, in the channels here, I have production being channel 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 connected to those 6 channels. And in my audio area here, I have channels 1 and 2 available as program channels for everybody else. And all I have to do at the remote site is I run another computer with another copy of UnityConnect, and it connects the same clever way as the other system does through it. I point it at my server, and it finds where it is. It sends the audio, and I use a regular audio interface or any kind of analog to digital or analog to analog. When I did that emergency setup for the microphone, the live microphone onto the PA, I just use a little box that gives me 2 analog into my laptop, and I plug them in.
Right.
Yeah, Pete,
so this way.
Is this what we were using on that 5-city KMPG show we did?
No, when we were back in KPMG, that was all VCOM, which is yet another similar system, but totally different. The same, but different. This software was written by a very clever man, and I'm sorry I don't know his name, who invented also how to deposit your checks in the bank. And what's his name, Jess?
Chuck Downs. As a lot of you know, you can now take a picture of the back of your check, the front and back of your check, and send it to the bank to deposit it. He is
Thank you, Chuck Downs.
This is the man and his partner who wrote that software and collect significant royalties on that. the backstory of Unity Intercom is he's a rather religious gentleman, and his church wanted an intercom, but could not afford it. Now, Chuck could have easily have written a check and bought an intercom, but Chuck decided to write an intercom instead. Now,
Sure,
a lot,
sounds logical. Just
yeah,
find an income system.
right. Now, a lot of the features you see in this program did not exist when I first discovered him. And through teaching him broadcasting,
Sure,
a lot of features have been incorporated.
sure.
Getting back to Connect, there's another sweet little thing buried in Connect that people don't know about. And that is you can put Dante in one end, and on the other end, Connect will convert it to MADI or to analog,
Whatever you connect it to, right?
whatever you connect it to. Now we can get to the bad things about the system. Number one, obviously, if you're using an IFB, you don't want to put the talent in his own ear. We know what happens, just like in real life. The other thing is this program cannot be sold to companies like Bexel or NEP or AMV or so on and so forth. It
What
will
kind of
work.
companies are those?
Any companies that have intentions of purchasing this program to rent it for their own gain can purchase the program, but there are back doors written into this whereby the program has the ability to monitor IP addresses and MAC addresses. And if it sees a bunch of different IP addresses being used, it knows to shut the program down.
In other words, it's only supposed to have one computer on one end and another computer on the other end, period. Right?
Basically, yes.
One to one.
But the point of the matter is, if it sees rentals happening, if it sees that you're sending and receiving from multiple addresses, IP addresses every week, at some stage of the game, it will shut it down.
Because I use this on every show I'm on, and I'm always in a different IP address, and I've never gotten shut down.
Well, you will one day.
So I'm going to talk to Chuck about that. Make sure my Connect doesn't ever get shut down because it's used in a different place every week.
Right.
We'll talk about that. Now, why is that? Is that a government thing? Is that an NSA thing, or is that a protective thing, or something like that, or what?
No, because basically I have exclusive rental rights within the United States.
Aha, it's you.
It's me.
But Pete, your server is always in the same location, right? So it's always on the same.
No, but the other end of my Unityconnect, it's in a different place often.
Right, but it's based on the server.
But the host server
my server's
in one
always
location.
Right. Now, occasionally, I have used the server locally twice. I've used the server locally on a show, and I will know now to call you and say, Jess, I'm breaking the law. Please don't shut me down.
Right. What we've done to make everybody happy is there are a number of companies that are using this for rental. Now, what they've done is an agreement with me where I sub-rent to them, and then in turn, they pay us a fee.
Right.
That way it doesn't get shut down.
Right. Jeff Jones asked a question. Do you have to put the server on site to use IO functions like mine is, or at home? Well, the reason I do mine at home is you've got to be able to take your network connection, your internet connection, and go in and open up ports 20101 and 20102. And
Correct.
if I'm walking into a ballroom system, we guarantee you'll never find anybody on site in a hotel who's smart enough to how to do that. So it was just easier for me to do it at home.
Right. What I've done on the shows is on the initial bids, I state that these things must happen.
Right.
And then I go in and there's a port open tool that's available on the internet for free, which you can, once you get the IP address, you can look and see if it is in fact open before you get there.
Right. When I was on the show with Mac on the Major League Gaming, we had an entire IT department there that could do anything. And so it was easy for me to say to them, please open these 2 ports and give me a public facing IP, and bingo, we were up. But that's the unusual situation.
Extremely unusual. Believe it or not, there's only, I think, 3 or 4 circumstances that I've run into where that was able to happen lickety split.
Right.
There's a 4-letter network that deals primarily in sports. Who I
That's
won't
NBC, right? Is that 4 letters? NBC, CBS, ABC?
who
I don't know.
will not mention, that has their own IT department, and now after 2 years has finally figured it out.
This is
But-
a question from Ryan. Can you save these configs as a file and import and export them?
Absolutely. What do you think of that one?
Where do you do that on there? Is that
Okay,
in the general tab?
if you look on Unity server, on
Right,
the
on the top?
right, you'll see an icon and it says Unity.
Oh, you mean on the top up here? Okay.
Yeah, top, right up here. If you can
Right.
see.
Got
If
it.
you click on it, save configuration and restore configuration.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah,
Now-
that actually reminds me, that is where you go to see if you need an update. It's on this little tab up on the top, not in
Correct.
the Unity server thing. It's on the little connect up top, Unity. And so you can look there and see, check for software updates.
Right. They also have a documentation tab, which takes you to about a 15-page document, excuse me, which goes through everything regarding the server. And what they've added most recently is deactivate computer, so that you can deactivate your code, which you get when you purchase the
Right.
program,
Right.
and then use that code on another computer.
Actually, that's what I did when I had to, I was in another city and I wanted to put the server locally, is I logged on. The problem with this server right here was offline. I couldn't get it connected remotely. That's why I had to use a local server. And I just plugged in my regular login code to the remote server. And since this was offline, it didn't even know it even existed. So it worked fine.
Right. Pretty much last but not least, if anyone wants to play with this, you're more than welcome to play with it with my server. Just send me an email. I'll set you up and you can play with it for a week or two and see if it suits your fancy. The other thing is I'm authorized to do some discounting of all of the software involved. And the only thing I ask is when you download the trial of the server and the client, it's going to ask you for an authorization code to use it. And the code is DCSCOMMS.
And what's for that? What is this for? The demo?
This is for the demo mode, yes.
Okay.
So that in a nutshell, quite a large nutshell, is Unity Intercom with a very brief introduction to Connect as well.
Perfect, perfect. And next week, on what day do we have another Unity? Actually, coming on Monday, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope, it's on Wednesday.
Wednesday. I knew it was one of those days.
Yeah, it was sometime next week. We're going to be doing a basically another conversation with Jesse, but adding Brian Reddy from CP Communications and doing a case study on the New York Marathon and the application of this technology across an entire city, which that's a little bigger, right? That's a lot
It's
of
going to be really
cans.
interesting.
It's a lot of string.
It's an amazing application for Unity comms, much like the PD Live stuff is amazing, but in that they replaced hundreds of walkie-talkies and repeaters across all of New York City with 100 of these Sonam military-grade cell phones, and all the production people, all the camera people, all the motorcycle drivers, all the car drivers, everybody just communicated on Unity Intercom, and it was truly amazing. And CP Communications does have 100 of those phones and the service to rent. The equipment is licensed through Jess, so you're not going to get in trouble by renting it from CP. And if you ever just need to rent a bunch of Unity Intercom and the server service, talk to CP Communications, and we'll be covering that next Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah. Before we go away, Jess, one of the questions people had was, how can they contact you? Would you mind sharing an email address that's good for people to reach out to you at?
Surely. It's D as in David, C as in Charles, S as in Sam, C as in Charles, O as in Oscar, M as in Mary, M as in Mary, S as in Sam, at iCloud.com. My phone number is 702-595-3323. I will tell you that, as you all know, there are tons of robo and spam calls coming through. So unless I recognize a number, I usually don't pick it up. But leave a message, I'll see it, and I'll get back to you.
That seems pretty reasonable to me.
One of the things we pride ourselves with is we have a full-time person in New York We have 2 full-time people in the Midwest, and I'm covering the West Coast as far as Q&A and emergency, and oh my God, why can't I work it? 90% of the problems we have can be cured through TeamViewer.
Good
So
to know.
the suggestions I have is, if you're serious about this, put TeamViewer on your machine. We can get together and resolve the problems.
It's funny, I mentioned we were doing this particular session to my son-in-law on a FaceTime call last night, and he recognized the name because he's a timer for New York Roadrunners Club that does the New York Marathon, and he has used the system.
You're too young to have a son.
I have a grandson now.
Oof. Wow.
And his grandson uses UnityCom too.
Only imagine what his grandson will be using 10 years from now. It's pretty awesome. Pete, do we see any other? We have some questions that have just kind of been coming in. Anything
I
we
don't
want
see
to
any.
address before we wrap up here?
Charlie, I leave my server running at home because it's easier to open up and close the ports that way. If you can deal with that on site, of course you can deal with that. If you're doing a show that happens to be heavy into IT, you probably have a department that can do that. But functionally, there's no need to have it on site with you. Doesn't make any difference if it's here or on your show. It's going to sound virtually the same. No perceptible latency in it. So I think it's less latency than a normal phone call.
If you do have 2 people sitting in the room, 2 or 3 feet apart from each other, both on the system, yes, they're going to hear latency.
Sure.
And I did have one complaint about
That's
that.
That's the same with 2 cell phones. You put 2 cell phones in the same room, you're going to hear latency.
Physics. The other last thing I want to mention is we're about 2 to 3 weeks away from announcing another addition to the system, which has come about thanks to that good old coronavirus, whereby people will be able to work from home using video equipment and using Unity.
But you have to stay 6 feet away from your iPhone. Remember, keep social distance to your iPhone.
I just put a Clorox wipe over mine.
Same thing.
Where can you get Clorox wipes anymore?
Exactly.
I can get all you want in Vegas.
That's right. That's the place to be.
I don't think we ever got another question from Mitchell Boyce clarifying what he meant by duplex directs. But
yeah, he claimed he didn't ask that question.
Somebody's using his name. Fair enough. Then we've answered all the questions. There's nothing more to know about Unity.
Yeah, I think would invite everybody to join us on this deep dive next Wednesday on the application, because I know when somebody hears marathon, right, and they hear TV event, they immediately think, oh well, this isn't something that would apply to my application. I'm in a house of worship, or I'm in a corporate event. I don't need this level of scale. Well, what I've found is, as you listen to people describe deploying at scale, it becomes very easy to work down then from that point. And a lot of those same principles are going to apply regardless of how big that system becomes. So I would like everybody to, if they can join us, come with some more questions. I have a question that I'm not going to want answered right now. I'm going to wait for the answer on Wednesday. And yep, Pete, just hold your hand right up there for the rest of the week. And that question is, if I'm talking to IT, what's the bandwidth that I need to request from them if I'm going to put a server in, in a building, if I'm going to be transporting, what kind of footprint am I going to be leaving based on those channels? And that way, when you folks are thinking about where in your architecture you're going to place these kind of products, you can walk into them. Not only do you know the ports that you need, but you can also talk about them with what your bandwidth requirements are and the impact perhaps that you're going to have on that system.
Let's not wait till next week. Jess should answer that right now.
As I said earlier, the system uses 6K a second.
Okay. And
And
that's
just-
regardless of the number of channels?
Just as a point of reference, Kelly, 48 channels of Dante, two-way 48 uses 100K.
There we go.
So it's very low data usage.
Exactly. So we want to be able to give them, and they'll want to know, is it
And no data
100
flows
meg.
if you're not talking.
100 meg?
100
If
meg.
a channel
100
is
meg, right.
silent,
100 base T.
channel is silent, nothing flows. So unless everybody on every channel is talking,
Right.
you don't have any significant bandwidth at all.
So we're talking 6K per channel, right?
Right, per second.
Correct.
One
Per
last
second,
thing
per second.
that I thought about, obviously, regardless of the manufacturer of the phone, their primary purpose is to be used as a phone. So an incoming phone call will supersede a Unity session. When the call is done, Unity pops back up. Now, the way to get around that is on iPhones, and I'm sure on all the other manufacturers, there's a do not disturb button, which will block incoming calls, but will still allow you to receive text messages.
That's
Now,
a good tip.
this Unity is traveling on the data part of the phone connection, right?
Right. There's 3 radios in a phone. There's the cellular for voice communication. There's a data channel. And of course, there's the Wi-Fi channel.
So when you're in a giant stadium full of iPhones all banging away at the Wi-Fi trying to get logged on, the data channel is relatively unused.
Relatively unused, yes. I've tried it at 2 Super Bowls, and I have not had a problem.
Yep, me too.
Well, if the two
There
of
we
us
go.
had a problem, that's
And-
pretty much.
And the fact that your producer for the PD Live wants everybody in the local studio to use it, what more can be said? What do
Right.
we need all this other intercom stuff for?
We have also sourced some pretty high quality Wi-Fi gear that's relatively cheap. And if we have problems, we can just drop an antenna.
So do those bell packs in the studio run mostly on cellular?
Mostly on Wi-Fi.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a good Wi-Fi system because my experience in the whatever Wi-Fi is their kind of world is that the Unity Intercom is not that reliable unless I'm doing the Wi-Fi, which I never am. So
Right. I tell people that I will not do anything over Wi-Fi because, as we know, Wi-Fi is basically line of sight, and
Right.
as we know, cellular is much more reliable. And as soon as all of the boys, the big boys, come up to this 5G, there's not going to be a problem.
well, there is a caveat to that. 5G on T-Mobile phones
Is not true 5G.
still operates under 600 megahertz and
That's
is
right.
no faster than light. No difference.
Right.
So don't get sold a bill of goods and pay for 5G on T-Mobile phones because it's not going to work for you.
Right. Verizon and AT&T are going, I forget what the name of the other band is, but they are going with the more prosperous or more enhanced 5G band.
I think it was you too.
Don't remember it.
Oh,
No,
you
the
know,
other
and on
band.
that note, I think I'm going to wrap up because right now, obviously, T-Mobile won't be coming on this show with us for a few days. But anyhow, thanks for joining us, Jess. Thanks for sharing this, taking this time. Everybody, thanks for these great questions. We saw some that came in. Chris Buckley, reach out to us so we can get that circulated around. And anybody else, you'll be getting a follow-up email from us. Yes, these are available to be watched later. And please keep in touch. We'll forward emails if they come into me, Pete, or Mac. We'll make sure they get in the right hands and get them over to Jess. And we'll look forward to everybody joining us again on our next webinar. And that's going to be rad. So the intercom discussions just keep coming. And what I love about it, there's a place in the world for everything right now. And now is the time to learn it. So to everybody, have a great weekend, and so long, Jess, Pete,
And
Matt.
thank you to the three of you for putting this together for everyone involved.
Well,
Well,
Our pleasure.
if it weren't for this, we'd all be sitting on our couches, getting in shape,
I am
watching
sitting on my couch.
something on TV, and it's been keeping our brains from exploding, just getting together every day, talking amongst ourselves. And we now have 6 or 7 shows a week we're doing, and we'll probably get up to 10 shows a week, 1 in the morning, 1 at night. So in fact, starting next week, we're doing 2 shows timed to work in Europe and Asia. So we're doing the
Wow.
show at 1 a.m. and it's been great.
Well, if and when we do something similar to this again, I hope to be doing it from the middle of Lake Mead and
As
making
long
all
as
of
as long as you have cellular connection, we can do it. No problem.
we do.
there
Piece
you
of
go.
cake. See y'all later. Bye bye.
All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. So long.
You too. Take care.